that after death comes judgment. And his fate is one that so many are falling victim to. And one of the main reasons why is because of Satan. You see, Satan knows that God wants to use this generation. And whenever he realizes that God is about to use a generation, Satan does whatever he can to destroy that generation. This is why today we see it all too often. Lives destroyed, dreams ruined.
I've been waiting for you boys.
Satan has destroyed countless lives through drugs and alcoholism. And when they die, Satan has won. He has destroyed countless lives through crime and violence. And when they die, again, Satan has won. And you may say, why? Why does he care to take lives? Because he knows that he has no future. He knows that he is doomed. He knows that his future is the lake of fire and nothing is going to change that. And so his goal now is to take as many down with him as he can. And this is why he wants us to kill each other and even ourselves. And he won't be satisfied until we all end up slaves of sin and on that path to death. He knows his future is hell, and so he wants us to end up like Stan, so that our future will be hell too. But we are on to his plan, and we will stand against it. Because we are waking up. We are realizing that our enemy is not each other. Our enemy is not even ourselves. Our enemy is the same enemy that we have had since the Garden of Eden, the Prince of Darkness. And so it is not coincidence that now more than ever you turn on the news and every night another young person has been murdered. It is not coincidence that suicide rates are through the roof. All of it, every bit of it, is part of Satan's strategy to exterminate this generation. Because he knows that God wants to use it. He knows that God has big plans for you and for this generation. And God wants to use it in a mighty way to witness for him. So yes, Satan has won some battles, and we have lost many along the way. But he will not win this war, because we are ambassadors of Christ. We are on assignment for the King. We are awake and on a mission to save the lost, to stop as many as we can from ending up like Stan.
We're here to come up with the next phony baloney crisis to put Americans back where they belong, in dark rooms glued to their televisions, too terrified to skip the commercial. I think we should go with a good old-fashioned public health scare.
A new disease. No one's immune. It's like the summer of the shark, except instead of a shark, it's an epidemic. And instead...
The only moral thing to do is release a deadly virus into the general public.
We do have something we've been holding on to, but it hasn't been tested. Get over here, NBC.
Well, we certainly believe in testing, but
Ned, stop!
It must be killed. It bears the mark of the beast. Sorry, not that one.
In other news today, Amazon has created a new way for customers to make purchases with just their palm, CBN News reports. The new hand recognition technology called Amazon One is currently available in 2 of its Amazon Go stores located in Seattle, Washington. By holding their palm above the device, patrons can enter secure areas and pay for items without cash or credit card. Amazon One appears to be just the latest option in the ever-expanding business of biometric scanning.
Sir, you're going to need to calm down. Calm down. You got to lower your voice. I need the account number for that.
I need a banker.
No, and the PIN.
Hi, good afternoon.
How can I help you? So, you need money to build this?
No. I have the money. What I need is discretion.
Okay. Yeah. We can be discreet.
You can be discreet. Only you. No one else can ever know who I am.
So, who are you?
The history that we were all taught growing up is wrong. My name is Scott Wolter, and I'm a forensic geologist. There's a hidden history in this country that nobody knows about. There are pyramids here, chambers, tombs, inscriptions. They're all over this country. We're going to investigate these artifacts and sites, and we're going to get to the truth. Sometimes history isn't what we've been told. America has always been a refuge for people seeking the freedom to speak their minds and practice their beliefs in ways they couldn't elsewhere in the world. As a result, churches, the press, and even secret societies like the Freemasons have all prospered here in the United States. But now, the true mission of one of America's alleged secret societies is being exposed.
A new world order. Presidential decrees cascading from President Trump's pen.
Alexa, what was the joke?
Why did the chicken cross the road? Because humans are a fragile species who have no idea what's coming next.
Please stand in a single file line and make sure to practice social distancing at all times. 6 feet apart at all times, and your mask is mandatory. We will get with each patient one by one. Due to mandatory vaccination volumes, your current wait time is 1 hour. Everyone must receive their vaccination. Once you have your vaccination, you will receive your immunity license. Your immunity license will allow you to travel and open your new bank account. The United Global Association thanks you for your patience and compliance. Thank you.
These required vaccinations, and this is just the start. Because while it may be flu for Massachusetts today, it's going to be COVID-19 for all the states coming up. And it's essential to understand that ultimately governments have the ability to compel vaccine.
This is a good beginning.
However, there is no question about what will happen if the CDC's Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices recommends that all Americans get the newly licensed coronavirus vaccine. The government has a national vaccine plan. It is a plan designed to make sure you, your child, and everyone in America gets every dose of every vaccine that government officials recommend now and in the future. Established under the 1986 National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act during the Reagan administration, the plan didn't really get traction until Congress funded the Vaccines for Children program in 1993 under the Clinton administration and gave the Department of Health and Human Services authority to fund a network of state-based electronic vaccine tracking registries that can monitor
6 letters, okay? And we're going to correspond each letter to a number, and that is to do with the alphabet. So C is the 3rd letter in the alphabet, so it's 3. O, 15, R, 18, 15, 14, A is 1. Add them together, 66. 666, my friends, symbolism, they use it all the time, and I find it interesting how the coronavirus is supposedly going to bring in the new financial system, aka the beast system, where everything is digital, everything is chipped, tracked, and traced.
South Korea used different types of tracking measures to figure out where people were moving, whether they were violating social distancing measures. So, for instance, if they are, supposed to be staying at home and instead they're out on the street or using public transportation, they were able to figure that out fairly quickly.
Here's an example of how it works. Let's say you find out you have coronavirus. The government then uses your cell phone and credit card data to track where you've been and then blast out an alert to the cell phones of people who may have crossed your path. Our own Jui Cho showing us what one of those alerts looks like on her phone. Another major difference. Here in the U.S., the N95 mask supply is limited, and the CDC advises people.
Patty Jo Myers, do you wish to renounce your faith in your God and receive your identification either on your right hand or in your forehead as set forth by Brother Christopher in Article 17A? If so, answer I do, and you will be returned to your rightful place in society.
Let me ask you at home, and even the guys here in the studio, a question. Let's say your boss offered you an easier way to log onto your computer in the morning or bypass having to get change for the vending machine or even get through a secure door by having a microchip planted in your hand. Anyone? Yes? Anyone? No! Yeah, well, it's apparently happening, and not everybody's happy about the idea.
I'm stunned. This music industry is a God blessing. You need to stop it. God don't like that we in this music business. God don't like that we talking about money, cars, and clothes and hoes. So if you want to be in this music industry and you want to get money, understand what it comes with. That it's not from God. It's from the devil. Understand? I just want you to understand that, because I don't want y'all to get lost in the sauce and complain what y'all going through and why y'all going through it. Period. It's not from God. Stop. As soon as you sign that contract and get that money and take that money, you sold your soul. So all that mimic talking about, oh, he sold his soul, she sold his soul. If you sign a contract and got that money.
I sold my soul.
Yes. Let it come out. Let that come all the way out. Let's tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth. I sold my soul for what? How about a house, a car, a vacation? What did you sell your soul for?
I sold my soul to have a life that I wanted, that I never had.
Yeah. A material life.
You're doing really well now, but didn't you release a CD like almost 10 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, I released a gospel record when I was 15 because I grew up in, a household where all I ever did was listen to gospel music, and my parents are both traveling ministers, and so I kind of sang about, what was going on in my life at 15, and that's how I got introduced to the music industry. 'Cause I swear I wanted to be like the Amy Grant of music, yeah. But it didn't work out, and so I sold my soul to the devil.
Thank you.
Thank you. The prophecy of the mark of the beast is one of the most incredible in the Bible. Simply stated, it tells us that in the last days, no man, woman, or child will be able to buy or sell anything unless they have a mark in their right hand or in their forehead. Years ago, a prophecy like this would have been absolutely impossible to fulfill with these old cash registers or with the bartering system where a farmer may trade eggs for milk or so on. These things could have never come to pass. But with today's emerging technology, we are the first generation that qualifies to be the last generation before the return of Christ. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. The prophecy of the mark of the beast is not only important because it pinpoints as a pure matter of fact that we are the first generation with the technology available to fulfill such a prophecy. It's also important because it is one of the clearest and most widely known prophecies from the Word of God. Saint and sinner alike have heard about the prophecies of the mark of the beast. Many of them have seen the movie The Omen or The Exorcist and had some idea of some eventual evil that's going to evolve in the world. The idea of 666. The idea of the Antichrist causing every man and woman under some form of Big Brother society to receive a mark are well known amongst the population. As I say, not just amongst Christians, but amongst the unbelievers as well. That's what makes this prophecy so very important. Because the unbeliever, knowing about this prophecy and understanding the clarity of this prophecy, there is very little room for interpretation here, will be very interested if we can document for him how this prophecy is coming to pass. In turn, he'll be interested in hearing about other prophecies then, and eventually the gospel. This is what is so important about documenting these types of prophecies. Unfortunately, what has happened is in our rush and in our anxiety to share with people how quickly things are moving along, we have often in the Christian community relied on rumor and speculation as the basis of prophetic fulfillment. Let me give you an example. A few years ago, you probably heard a rumor that a Social Security check had been issued to various people throughout the United States saying that they could not cash that check unless they received a mark in their right hand or in their forehead. So the rumor went, when those people called the Social Security Administration, they were told, oh no, that's not quite free yet. That's a few years down the road. Please return that check and we'll give you another one. This was reported as fact in Christian books and in Christian ministries all over North America. You would think with such a dramatic development, someone would have thought to photocopy one of these checks, or someone would have kept one as documentation of this incredible fulfillment of Bible prophecy. Instead, there's absolutely no documentation whatsoever. This crying wolf is only going to add disrespect to the prophetic word of God, and it's going to make it much more difficult for us to reveal the actual coming of the mark of the beast as it really happens. Another example, once again widely reported in Christian media, was that government workers in various locations in the United States were having to have a mark implanted in their right hand or in their forehead before they could get into high security zones. We were told also that in Sweden an entire town had received the mark of the beast, so that they could shop and test the system there. Once again, rumor and speculation, no hard proof of the facts. The problem is, as I say, that if we try to use these rumors as a proof of what's happening, we are going to have cried wolf. And when we begin to try to document what is really going on, and when we try to witness with this prophecy, we're going to have discredited by our own behavior one of the clearest and most dramatic proofs possible that we live in the last generation before the return of Christ. What you are going to hear in this report is documentation of how this is all actually coming about. We do not believe that there is anyone on the planet Earth right now who is being forced to receive a mark in their right hand or in their forehead. Nor do we believe that the system is completely in place for this to happen. However, what we're going to show you is that the technology exists. We're also going to show you how the will amongst world leaders to implement such a system is coming along. Indeed, what we're going to show you that the only thing really left to make such a system viable and to make such a system come to pass is the emergence of the one known in the Bible as the Antichrist. Let us also say here, many people say, well, if you are speaking about the mark of the beast, you shouldn't use your Visa card or your MasterCard. Now, I'm not doing a commercial for these credit card companies, but this is not the mark of the beast. The mark of the beast is not going to be some economic decision that we make for purely economic reasons. When someone receives the mark of the beast, the Bible says that they are doomed to eternal damnation and judgment for receiving this mark. God is not going to judge anyone in that way because they've made an economic decision. Instead, the acceptance of the mark of the beast is going to be an initiation. It's going to be an acceptance of the deity of the Antichrist. When someone receives the mark of the beast, they will be saying, I side with the philosophy and belief of this man who is going to lead us into a new world order. The idea of an entire world being given over in devotion and worship and receiving a mark to worship a man, could such a thing be possible? We don't have to look far into history to see that very thing happening. We saw that very thing happening in the shadow of an Antichrist, a man by the name of Adolf Hitler.
My feelings towards Hitler were such as if he were some superhuman being between man and a god. He was sent by providence. That's what he told the German people all the time. He was sent by providence. And his fatal attraction, the whole people believed it. I too. I even wanted to die for him. I adored him so much that I wanted to give my life away for him if there had been a chance to do so.
But it wasn't only with Adolf Hitler. Today such cults exist as well. There was Jim Jones in Guyana. There was Bhagwan Rajneesh in Oregon. There is the cult worship. The following of a man as God is as real today in our world as it has ever been. However, there's also other kinds of cult worship as well that we don't really recognize as such. The way that teens and young people idolize their rock stars and their music stars show the devotion and the wave of euphoria that people can get caught up in. This is the kind of society, this is the kind of allegiance that the Antichrist is going to have. This is the kind of following that a rock star can only dream of having. If people will follow an Adolf Hitler the way they have, if they'll follow music stars the way they have, how are they going to follow a man with all power and signs and lying wonders? It is that wave of euphoria that will be the basis of the rise of the mark of the beast. What we want to look at now is exactly how the technology exists to make such an all-powerful system possible in the very near future. When we speak of the prophecy of the mark of the beast, one of the first things that comes to mind is buying and selling in the New World Order. Let's take a look at buying. Of course, when you buy something in a store, there's all kinds of different ways of paying for it. The first way is with cash, where you simply take your money out of your wallet, give it to the cashier, and the money has actually just changed hands from your hands to that of the store right on the spot instantly. The second way to pay for something that you purchase, of course, is with a check. And in this instance, you simply take your check out, you would write your check to the store, and then give it to the cashier. In this instance, a very different process takes place. The check then goes to the store's bank. It is then sent to your bank, where it is cleared out of your bank account. It then has to go back to the store's bank once again, and then eventually back to the store. A very different and complex transaction took place there. Many different people handling this piece of paper, and it costs a great deal of money. A third way, of course, to pay is by credit card, and this is a way that we've all become a little too accustomed to, actually. In this instance, you just take your credit card out, you give it to the clerk, and a very different transaction takes place this time. Now, this is sent to the credit card company. In 3 or 4 days, the credit card company will send the money back to the owner of the store. Then in 30 days, your credit card company will have to send you a bill, at which time you then have to pay the bill and send it back to the credit card company. Once again, you'll notice the number of transactions that have had to take place just for this small amount of money to change hands. Of course, another way that you can pay for your groceries, and the one that is being promoted so much today, is by the debit card. Your debit card looks identical to your credit card. You could not even tell the difference, except something very different happens in your transaction. When you give this debit card to the cashier, you then will find that the card is run through a scanner. That scanner is electronically linked to your bank, and the money will immediately be taken out of your bank account and placed in the store's account. With this pattern of transaction, you will notice that what we have done here is not replace the check or not replace the credit card. We have actually replaced cash itself. And this is the direction that we're heading in, and the reasons that bankers and retailers want to move in that direction is because of the tremendous amount of savings that will be involved. The stores like the idea of such a cashless society for a number of reasons. First of all, obviously there will be less cash on hand for potential robberies. It is very difficult to break into a store and steal electronic impulses, so theft and robbery, which so plagues retail stores, will no longer be a problem. Secondly, the stores like it because they may pay much less of a charge, early studies show, for a debit card transaction than they do for a credit card transaction. For example, you may not realize that when you buy something with a credit card in a store, that retailer has to pay a fee to Visa or MasterCard for using that method of transaction. And with a reduced amount on every transaction under debit card system, it could be much cheaper for the stores. Finally, and probably most importantly, the stores love the idea of debit card transactions because early studies in this new technology show that consumers tend to spend 3 times as much money using debit cards as they do for credit cards, cash, or checks. That statistic would seem to be backwards, but the studies show that people are much less anxious about future bills coming in, so will spend much more under this system. That is probably the main factor motivating retailers to move in this direction. Consumers like the idea of a debit card system as well. As we've already mentioned, the majority of people using debit cards will be women who are very concerned about bills coming up in the future. So if they can actually pay with a debit card, they don't see the cash leaving their hands, so there's not the negative feeling there, and also they know a bill won't be coming later, they're very happy to use the debit card system. The survey that was run in Ontario, Canada, found that 90% of people who used the debit card system in test sites approved of using it and would continue to do so. In London, England, the statistics were 97% in favor. National governments also like the idea of electronic transfer as well. The main reason being because of the millions of checks that government has to issue every month, whether they be Social Security checks or welfare checks. It costs the government a great deal of money to send out these checks, and of course they're liable to be stolen or to be lost. If they can electronically transfer funds right into people's accounts, it will cost millions of less dollars, and it will make sure that the funds get where they're intended to be. Bank and credit card companies, most importantly, really like the idea of moving towards this new system. In the first instance, it's much cheaper to process than a check or a credit card transaction, as we've already pointed out. It also allows for the instant movement of money with no lag times, that the banks can allocate the money to where it's supposed to go instantaneously instead of money being tied up in check transfers and so on. Also, they get their money instantaneously instead of waiting 30 days as they wait now on a credit card transaction to collect money from people. Now, most of you will be aware of the fact that credit card companies make a great deal of their money out of people who do not pay on time at the end of the 30 days and therefore pay high interest on the outstanding balance. Under a debit card system, that could still function, just if you went to withdraw money from your bank account and transfer it to the stores, you would go into an overdraft situation and pay the same way that you did to a credit card, so they would still maintain their income that way. They've just wiped out the 30-day waiting time. Probably one of the most important reasons that the banks want to get rid of the credit card and checks and cash and so on is because it can allow them to eliminate the bank branch. When you have to set up branches and staff them with people, it becomes extremely expensive. Electronic funds transfer could wipe that all out.
Probably the biggest change in banking over the last 10 or 15 years has been the computer. The automated teller machines locally are as well being expanded. There's a couple of reasons for that. One is the automated tellers give a customer 24-hour access to their bank accounts, which improves the service. Two, it provides us a vehicle where we don't have to go through the expense of opening an actual branch just to give somebody access in a particular area. We're looking at them in high volume areas right now, shopping centers, the GO train stations. You might see them in variety stores, 7-Elevens. You'll probably see them in the future in places like hospitals, grocery stores, that sort of thing. So there is a definite trend towards maximizing our market there.
Randy Sestilli is a computer hardware specialist working for one of the largest data processing companies in the world. He agrees completely with William Woods.
The youth who kind of took to them, and the oldsters would tend to be a little bit suspicious of the new technology, but as general acceptance increased, more and more people use them, and now you find often is the case that there's larger lineups outside the ATM than there is within the bank. It just makes getting money more accessible to the average person, whether it be 3 o'clock in the morning, morning drive time, after work, on a Sunday, etc. It just gives people quick access to cash. As well, for the banks, I think it's going to be a long-range bonanza because it'll allow them to more fully automate their systems and reduce costs, because it's much easier to put a machine in a downtown mall than it is to establish a whole branch with the human resources costs, etc., and that kind of overhead that goes along with setting up a full-blown branch. So I think it'll allow the banks, the major financial institutions, to contain costs over time. As well, you have the added feature that whether I'm in Toronto, New Orleans, Chicago, Philadelphia, or London, England, Seville, Spain, I can have access to whatever bank funds I have in my Yorktown, USA branch as easily as if I had the cash in my pocket. And as we get into a global society where people travel, business travelers especially, need access to quick cash, and it allows them to do that.
Just how close to the cashless society are we? Every indicator seems to prove that it is a phenomena that is just around the corner. When you begin to hear the reasons for the elimination of cash, they sound so very good. The first one, of course, is drug dealing. Drug dealers, by their very nature, deal in cash suitcase loads at a time. If we could just eliminate cash, we're told, we could eliminate this entire industry. Go beyond that and you get into theft, kidnapping, extortion. By getting rid of cash, you could get rid of the entire black market almost overnight. But there's yet another reason. A recent survey in the United States found that if they went to a cashless society where every transaction could be carefully tabulated, $100 billion a year more in taxes could be collected. When you're talking about the cashless society, however, the primary focus is always on control. As Terry Gallinoy, the former Director of Communications for Visa International, revealed in his book Charge It, there is a specific direction that is being followed. And he warns that protesting too loudly about it isn't going to help either, because the disturbance you kick up is going to end up in one of your files. And on that come and get it day, when we're all totally and completely dependent upon our card, or whatever survival device might replace it, you might be left all alone without one. The tone of that quote should serve as a reminder of the exact same kind of emphasis that we hear in the book of Revelation. Let's take a look at that scripture in Revelation chapter 13 one more time. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. And there's a specific desire to bring this cashless society about. As Dee Hock, who was the former president of Visa International, said, electronic fund transfer will come primarily because bank card organizations are building the prerequisite networks, and not because local banks are putting automated teller machines into the grocery stores. In other words, he was telling us there is a specific plan in place here, put in place by the bank card organizations. There is a specific agenda, and I think we're beginning to get a bit of an indication what that agenda is. Very clearly, we now know two things. The technology is there to make it possible, and the will, the desire to put it into place, is there as well. The prophecy of the mark of the beast is located in Revelation chapter 13. By its very placement, we see it in part of a bigger context. You see, Revelation chapter 13 is the chapter of the Bible that speaks the most clearly about the New World Order that will exist in the last days. And this New World Order is made up of a political system that will span the world, a religious system that will span the world, and an economic system that will span the world. When we talk about this movement towards the mark of the beast, therefore, we're not talking about automated teller machines in Iowa or Kansas or in Florida. We're talking about an electronic web that will spread throughout and span the entire globe in the last days. The Ron Paul investment letter tells us a little bit about how far that has come. According to the former congressman, in the very near future, all the world's major banks will be connected by a new, highly advanced form of computer network. Sponsored by the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunications, or SWIFT, it provides an international common language for all banks in the world. So far, the top 54 countries have signed up.
We're entering an age where the emerging technologies is allowing connectivity and access to data that's been unprecedented in history. We have large systems that can talk to other large systems half a world apart, connected through fiber optic channel, or if we're talking about overseas connection, through satellite transmissions, which makes a response equivalent to going around the corner. That allows common databases, for example, to be referenced by multiple sources in real-time mode. Let me give you an example. The connectivities of stock market listings, for example. Challenge for the future, obviously, when you have stock markets all around the world and you have large financial institutions which are centralized in a city, they need instant access in what we call real time. That is, a trade happens at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time and it's instantaneously registered around the world, so that no one is advantaged or disadvantaged by like a lag in time, for example. But also, I think the key to these systems is that they're directly linked now.
Being a child in today's world is more difficult than ever before. And though we try to raise our children in a good Christian home, it's not always as easy as we might have hoped. Because as soon as a child leaves the comfort and safety of his parents' side, he enters a different world. As the battle for the minds and souls of our children intensifies, parents need to know that when their kids go out to play, it's not just fun and games. This important new video documentary with Peter Lalonde is must viewing for concerned parents, grandparents, youth workers, church pastors, or anyone who wants to better understand the world that our children are growing up in. And as always, you know that it is information that you can trust. From the occult messages of the Saturday morning cartoons to the anti-Christian propaganda that pollutes primetime TV, this video is a real eye-opener. Join Paul Lalonde and Charles Evans as they examine some of today's most popular toys, many of which you may find in your own child's toy box. Learn about the historical roots of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and take a good look at the incredible marketing machine that stands behind them. Children's books and comics, video and board games. This exciting video exposes many dangers that you may not be aware of. Don't delay. Order your copy today. Here's how.
To order your copy of this important new video, call us toll-free at 1-800-PROPHECY. That's 1-800-776-7432. Not only will you get the full-length documentary Not Just Fun and Games, but we'll also send you the 26-page study guide absolutely free. Don't miss out on this exciting offer. The number again is 1-800-776-7432. Or if you prefer to order by mail, send check or money order for $24.95 to Not Just Fun and Games Video, care of the Omega Letter Publishing Group, 4429 Queen Street, Niagara Falls, Ontario, L2E 2L2. Or in the United States, Not Just Fun and Games Video, care of the Omega Letter Publishing Group, P.O. Box 1440, Niagara Falls, New York, 14302. And please, make all checks payable to the Omega Letter Publishing Group.
With this movement towards a worldwide cashless society, planners are faced with one huge problem. The bankers are losing their shirts on fraud associated with automated teller machines and electronic funds transfer. Computer hackers are staying one step ahead of them in their efforts to steal electronic impulses and to steal money associated with electronic funds transfer. Automated teller machines are being ripped off by literally thousands of dollars. Of course, the bank organizations are trying to keep this very quiet. They don't want to destroy confidence in a system that they are trying to sell to the American and Canadian public. The degree of their effort to eradicate this fraud was shown to us just before Patty and I were married, actually. We were both working for a Christian ministry at the time, and the RCMP, those are the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, in association with the FBI and the CIA, they came walking into our office and they said to Patty, who happened to be out front at the time, "We're looking for a fellow by the name of Peter Lalonde." Of course, Patty thought that there was something I hadn't told her out of my past, and here went the marriage. This guy was being hauled off to jail. As it turns out, what it was, the research that I was doing at that time on the technologies we're talking about right here was being recorded. Every time I requested information, every time I made a phone call, my name was being entered into a huge database in Los Angeles. They wanted to keep track of everyone who had knowledge of how the system worked to try to cut down on the fraud associated with it. So very quietly, the banks are working in a big way to cut down on this fraud. The way that they're limiting their losses right now is simple. As you know, with your bank card, you are only allowed to withdraw so much money out of your account at a time on a given day. I think the limit here is about $500. What they're doing is not allowing you to clean out someone's account if you stole their card on one day. In the future, however, if we're going to move towards a new world order and a totally cashless society, these limits will be infeasible. You cannot limit the use of someone's money to only $500 a day. What if they have to buy a car or a house or other large ticket items? So as banks begin to get closer towards the fully cashless society, and as they feel comfortable that they've eliminated fraud, you're going to see those limits begin to go up. But in the meantime, fraud is setting the whole system back.
I think the challenge for those companies that are running automated teller machines is to come up with a way that they can absolutely tie the card to the person, be it by fingerprinting systems that can be matched or retinal scan systems or something. I think the day of the personal identification number is over, and they'll have to get some sort of much more sophisticated tie-in to prevent frauds, to prevent misuse of the system.
The issue in the 90s is security. As Randy Sestilli pointed out, the secret is going to be to make sure that the person who is presenting a card for a transaction is actually the owner of that card. The way that that is done right now is that when someone uses their card, they have to punch in along with it a secret personal identification number that theoretically no one else knows. There are some huge problems with this system. The first is that people are lazy. A survey by the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta found out that the majority of people actually write their personal identification number right on their card to make sure they don't forget it. This, of course, defeats the whole system. But it's not only that. The personal identification number has glaring weaknesses. What about the elderly person who cannot remember a secret number? Or someone with a mental disability or someone with Alzheimer's? We must also not forget that if someone has a bank card or a debit card and they are robbed at gunpoint, it is very easy at gunpoint for the thief to get that personal identification number out of them and then use that card and that identification number together to withdraw money from that person's account. In answer to the question of how to solve this problem, the U.S. News and World Report article claims that many companies are betting that consumers will be glad to give up their plastic cards and forget their passwords and personal ID numbers in favor of a system that reassures a unique physical characteristic. Here is where we get to the crux of the matter. A debit card in your wallet is not nearly so good a proof that you are who you say you are as, say, your fingerprints. Why? Because your fingerprints are unique and someone simply can't steal them, and you can't forget them either. This idea of using a unique physical characteristic, whether it be fingerprints or retina scans of your eyes or hand scans, to determine the identity of an individual is known as biometrics, and it's the wave of the future. Marcel Graves is the founder of Identity Systems Incorporated.
The benefits to the issuing organization are that they can rest assured that the documents coming into the terminal, the card coming into the terminal, is legitimate. The issuing organization can rest assured that whoever presents the card, when their fingerprint matches the one that's in the card, is in fact the rightful owner of the card.
According to Benjamin Miller of Personal Identification News, biometrics will be a major part of our life by the year 2000.
Mr. President, please stand by while authority for this procedure is confirmed by I-print check. 3, 2, 1.
Identify for retina scan.
Kirk, Admiral James T.
Security scan approved.
No longer are Captain Kirk and James Bond the ones who need such elaborate controls. Now it is you and I, the citizens of the everyday world of this last decade of the 20th century. For example, Identity Systems, a Canadian company, are merging the technology of the smart card and fingerprint readers.
Why not put integrated circuit cards together with digitization of fingerprints, and you come up with a very tight system?
This space-aged identification system is based on a new kind of plastic card, the smart card. Unlike most plastic cards, the smart card has a microchip implanted within it that can contain all kinds of personal information and records, including a digitized record of your fingerprints.
The individual's fingerprint is read from the card into the terminal. The user is asked to resubmit his fingerprint. The two are compared, and access is granted or denied.
Such a technology, planners boast, will be as widespread and revolutionary as the invention of the telephone.
When one considers the number of passports and travel visas issued annually internationally, the number is mind-boggling. The really fascinating part of this whole exercise for me, though, is when one begins to consider the numbers of credit cards, when one begins to consider the numbers of healthcare cards, driver's licenses, building access cards, computer network access keys. The numbers are really quite staggering. In our travels, most people to whom we speak say, I'll sure be glad when you guys are up and running and I don't have to wander around with a wallet full of cards. One card will do everything. That idea is not that far down the pipe.
All of this talk of retina readers and hand scan machines and full body scanners, though they're being tested and used in high security installations, for wide scale usage, they're just far too expensive. In fact, the price would make it absolutely infeasible to use a system like this. Security expert Dick Nacito.
One is cost, okay, and that is really a very big issue, believe me. I mean, even with the awareness level that there is now with regards to the need for security, whether it's at the condominium level or the commercial building level or the bank level, the use of that technology is very expensive and it's limited, and it has to be perfected as well. It has to become a very easy to maintain type of technology as well, and I guess I say cost is a big factor.
You will note, however, that in the instance of the smart card, the only use for the plastic card is to serve as a handy carrying case for the microchip. The plastic card itself serves no other purpose. So, what if you took the chip out of the card and implanted it under the skin. Is that too big a leap in logic? By doing so, you would solve the very expensive problem of making sure the owner of the chip is who he says he is. The logic is clear, especially when you realize that these chips can cost well under $30 each. By going to such a system, at virtually no cost when compared to the current cost of credit authorization, credit cards, checks, and the massive losses from fraud, you would save literally billions of dollars a year worldwide.
One precaution. Prepare a subcutaneous transponder in the event we can't use our communicators. Insert the transponder, Doctor. Make one low pass to communication range in 3 hours. If we fail to make contact at the appointed time, take our coordinates from the transponder and beam us aboard no matter what our condition may be.
Aye, sir. Whatever your condition.
However, it's not just Trekkies and prophecy buffs who see the logical progression of this system. Here's a news release from the Gannett News Service. Here's a simple trick. Wave your hand over the computer code scanner at the grocery store checkout counter, and your bill is deducted from your checking account. The technology to accomplish this feat already is here, said Tim Willard, an executive officer of the World Future Society, but the will may not be. Just suggest something like an implant in humans, and the social outcry is tremendous, Willard said. While people over the years may have grown accustomed to artificial body parts, there is definitely a strong aversion to things being implanted. It's the big brother is watching concept. People would be afraid that all their thoughts and movements were being monitored. But are customer objections the only hindrance to the implementation of such a system? And if that is the only drawback to bringing this system along, it would seem that there are all kinds of excuses being given and reasons shown to the public why microchip identification technology is the greatest wave of the future and a great hope for mankind, not a hindrance. Like the New World Order, the logical pull towards this chip implant is becoming stronger every day. Let me just give you a few examples. For example, in the instance of elderly people. One of the most serious problems in hospitals, nursing homes, and even private residences is that older people, who are beginning to lose track with their surroundings, whether through Alzheimer's disease or any number of reasons, often wander off without anyone realizing it. The solution to this problem has been the widespread usage of ankle or wrist bracelets, which have an electronic trigger in them to warn nurses or family members when someone is leaving the premises. We asked Helen Furley of the Seniors Health Center if anyone considered such monitoring of their loved ones an infringement of their personal rights.
We have not encountered any resistance from family members. They do look on it favourably. Before we place the trigger on a resident, we do inform the family why we're putting the trigger on the resident, how the trigger can help protect the resident, and we do ask for their cooperation. Many families will individualize the trigger by placing a picture or something covering it with nail varnish on the back of the trigger, and will help us even apply it to the resident.
Of course, no one can argue with the logic of this program. An almost identical argument is being raised in the criminal justice system. With prisons bulging at the seams, 15 states are now trying electronic surveillance. Prisoners are fitted with an ankle bracelet. The bracelet sends electronic signals to a receiver connected to a telephone. If the prisoner leaves his home, the police are automatically called by the electronic monitor. We're replacing a $20,000 jail cell with a little electronic device. I think it's fantastic, raves one law enforcement official. Unlike the elderly, however, there is a real problem with attempted removal of the device. An implant would be a totally logical solution. While we're speaking of the criminal justice system, it's worth noting nationwide projects to use microchip technology, not just to keep track of convicted felons, but to keep track of one of their favorite targets. With the ever-increasing instances of auto theft, police departments all across North America are testing microchip-based auto theft preventers. The LoJack system, for example, developed by a Massachusetts firm, consists of a 4-inch MicroMaster implanted in a car. This homing device can be activated by police if the car is stolen. The MicroMaster then sends out an audible signal that state police can hear through tracking devices mounted right on their dashboards. Massachusetts Governor Michael Dukakis claims that the potential of this is mind-boggling. This could be the ultimate deterrence against auto theft anytime and anywhere. But if police can track stolen cars, could they not track other cars? Such power in the hands of the government has always been a dangerous and often misused thing. This does highlight, however, the point that much of the cry for extensive uses of microchip technologies centers around the tracking of people and now their cars. Another example of this are tests in the United States and Europe of smart highways. A microchip in your car under these systems would communicate with chips in the highway, telling you where the traffic was heavy and light. You could even punch in your destination into an onboard computer, and the highway itself would tell you the best route to take. However, the potential abuse of such a system is clear. A runaway government could track where a dissident's car was at any given moment. Another problem of the criminal justice system has been the inability of police to identify a suspect immediately on the scene instead of waiting until they get back to the station. At a cost of many thousands of dollars per car, police forces are installing computers into squad cars which will tap into the computers of the FBI's National Crime Information Center. Thus, if a suspect picked up in Oklahoma is being sought for murder in, say, New York, or a traffic ticket in Pennsylvania, the arresting officers immediately see the information. Of course, the problem often is that the criminals carry no or false identification. Once again, fingerprint readers, right in the police car, are being touted as the answer. The system is being tested in Aurora, Colorado, and the FBI wants to use at least $1 million of public money to get the program started. They also point to gun shops as a place where fingerprinting systems must be installed. Once again, as we noted before, the issue is cost. Such elaborate identification systems like retina readers, fingerprint readers, and hand scan machines are very, very expensive. Microchip implants, on the other hand, would be so cheap that the comparison is mind-boggling. And the technology to read such chips, virtually identical to the simple scanners in your grocery store, is both widespread and comparatively inexpensive. Let's also remember that the context into which the Mark of the Beast will eventually emerge is that of a new world order. The current designers of this new order are faced with a real problem, which has come to light in the efforts to create the single European market by the end of 1992. The problem is how to keep track of who is working where in this new United States of Europe so that accurate taxes can be paid in the correct country, and this is only the beginning. In March of 1991, the International Card Technology Institute presented a symposium in Barcelona, Spain, entitled Borderless Borders, the New World of the 21st Century. According to the Institute, the issues which must be addressed include identification. What information is necessary? What isn't? What forms? Who are the keepers of the database? Will international passports be issued by individual nations or a central bureau, for example, in the European Community? Security. How much information is necessary to ensure a nation's security? How can the conflict between privacy and security be resolved? How much do cultural and political attitudes impact security decisions? Telecommunications. How protected is the telecommunications infrastructure? What are the liabilities of PTTs and international telecommunications companies? Who will make the decisions? Government, business, or a worldwide entity? Banking and point of sale. Why should integrated circuit smart cards or debit cards replace cash? How much will identification and social services requirements drive these cards applications? International Card Technology Institute President Arlen Lesson made the following observations about the symposium. This is a very important conference, and not just because of the issues to be raised. The purpose of this conference is to formally and informally create a dialogue among people who must make decisions about how we are going to live in an open world. We are not yet a global community, but that is clearly the direction in which we are heading. Borders will tend to blur and disappear on levels of economic, technological, political, military, and even social activities. How can the integrity and the security of a nation be maintained if people are free to cross from one nation to another? Of course, there must be some constraints, some means of knowing who is wishing to cross, some means of monitoring and or identifying people from various nations. I don't know if you realize how dramatic what we just heard was, but what we saw in this conference was the discussion of a new world order, the birth of a society with no borders that was coming in the near future. And what was to be the basis of this new world order? A cashless society. A society controlled by a database that covers the entire globe, keeping track of every man, woman, and child, where they cross borders, when they buy and sell, an entire society exactly like the one spoken of in Revelation chapter 13. But the incredible thing here is the marriage of the two. Here we have a conference of world leaders discussing how the New World Order and this cashless society must come together. The exact pairing of Revelation 13. And where is this being born? In Europe. The very basis of the society out of which the Antichrist will rise. The very spot in the world where this New World Order with the mark of the beast will be born in the very near future. There are also very heartwarming reasons being given to accept the micro-technology of this New World Order. One of the most prevalent today is for medical emergencies. If a person lies dying today, ambulance or emergency workers often have no idea what the problem is. A medic alert tag would only be of limited help in a few situations. Optical cards, on the other hand, which can hold 800 pages of medical history including x-rays, charts, and EEGs, are today being vigorously marketed. Likewise, smart cards with their tiny microchip offer the same capacity. The chip which will allow you to buy, sell, work, and travel in the New World Order may, planners tell us, also save your life. Missing children. The degree of the crisis burst into our collective consciousness in the 80s. Once again, microtechnology is being offered as the solution. Children's shoes can carry a microchip in a little dog tag. Dentists are attaching microchips to children's teeth. Both of these ideas work like the chip placed in cars. If Johnny goes missing, police can activate the chip, leading them straight to Johnny. However, in the case of abduction, a kidnapper could discard the shoe or pull the chip off a tooth. An implant, of course, would not be so readily accessible. But just how far-fetched is this? I have with me on the line Dr. Daniel Mann, a plastic surgeon from southern Florida. He actually holds a patent for a microchip that can be implanted under children's skin. Dr. Mann, perhaps you could tell us a little bit about this microchip.
The implantable homing device is an answer to many of the problems in tracking people and livestock in all kinds of situations. And the implantable homing device is put in a area of the body, in an area usually that is very difficult to detect. It is an easy procedure. It does not take long time, and the homing device will allow to track these people or livestock in a much easier way.
So if someone is kidnapped, what then would happen?
The person who wears the homing device can trigger it, and it can also be triggered remotely. It can go into distress signal, and the distress signal will sound every once in a while, once in 24 hours or so, and it will leave a signal where the signal can be located on a screen due to the cellular towers.
Right.
By triangulation. A lot of the country is covered with cellular towers, and the same signal can be found. And when you have a control station that controls these towers, they have computers there, and the computer would then have a track of the signal.
Have you done any actual implants to this point?
I have been thinking about it for a long time, but I have not actually done the operation because one needs to get approval from the FDA, and there's other things that are involved with this.
I understand that this implant has been patented. What's the status with that?
The Commissioner of Patents and Trademarks of the United States had issued us a patent on this that covers not only the cellular system but also satellite system. So it has a huge potential in the future for this kind of device in all kinds of situations. Even if the cellular system would not be interested in that, the satellite system would certainly be available because there are many satellites now in the air and they don't have quite the use that people thought that they could use, and they certainly could use the homing device.
Dr. Mann, thank you very much. Well, up until this point, we have now seen some pretty convincing documentation of how far we've come, not just towards the technology to make the mark of the beast possible, but the actual beginning acceptances of the idea of an implant being accepted under the human skin. We're going to take a short break, but when we come back, we're going to take a look at what may well be a prototype being tested for the Mark of the Beast.
To order a VHS copy of this special report, send check or money order for $24.95 to Mark of the Beast Video, P.O. Box 1440, Niagara Falls, New York, 14302. For Canadian orders, write to Mark of the Beast Video, 4429 Queen Street, Niagara Falls, Ontario, L2E2L2. For MasterCard or Visa orders, please call 1-800-PROPHECY in Canada or the U.S.
We've spent quite a great deal of time so far documenting how both the technology and the public acceptance necessary to make the Mark of the Beast system work is quickly falling into place. However, in scientific research, the best place to go to see how far we've come in a specific area is in the testing laboratory. This case is no exception. Indeed, pilot programs being run in animal shelters and humane societies all over the world are proving that keeping track of large populations through microchip implants and centralized computer data banks is completely feasible. One such system is put out by the InfoPet organization of California. Their computer system boasts the ability to keep track of 4 billion cats and dogs worldwide, and the system is amazingly simple. A tiny microchip is injected through a simple syringe into a spot below their skin. Veterinarians report that there are no problems caused by the body rejecting the implant or infection being caused. Once the chip has been implanted, it can be read by an inexpensive scanner, much like the one in your grocery stores. These scanners, placed all over the nation, can read the chip, pull up the identification number, and identify any cat or dog in the entire nation. A simple phone call can then unite the pet and its owner.
The greatest problem with pets today is the tragic number of healthy young animals that have to be killed every year, hundreds of thousands of them in Canada alone, because we can't find the owner of these animals when they become stray. There are no systems available now to identify the dogs adequately and efficiently and quickly. Nose printing, tattooing, dog licenses all have their drawbacks. The most serious is the time delay in identifying the owner. The real advantage of the microchip is that it will provide a foolproof way of identifying animal owners quickly so that we can reunite them with their lost animals in a matter of hours, something which has never been possible before.
In their promotional materials, Identification Devices, another provider of these services, asks us to suppose that you were to make a list of the technical advances that are quickly reshaping the way we live. Micro-miniaturization of electronic components, high-speed data processing systems, powerful new computer programming techniques, and extremely sophisticated telecommunications devices, as well as new methods of encapsulating delicate components so they can function in unfavorable environments. Then comes the clincher. They say, then consider how these innovations might be employed to solve the age-old problem of providing positive identification of people, animals, and equipment. So here it all comes together now. Not only are we talking about tracking of animals and of equipment, we are now talking about using microchip technology to track people. This is exactly what we mentioned earlier that is taking place in this conference in Europe right now. I asked computer hardware specialist Randy Sestilli, in the light of all of these developments that we've talked about, if he thought they could possibly be leading towards the technology necessary for the Mark of the Beast prophecies to come to pass.
It is not hard to imagine, with the technology that's available today, that in the wrong hands, a massive amount of power can be placed. Do I think that the prophecies in Revelation are coming true? I think the technology is there. That's a serious concern. Yeah, I could see it happening.
In this brief special report, we haven't even had the opportunity to talk about the developments leading us towards a national identification system and the national ID cards that will go along with it. For example, the Social Security Administration in the United States now requires that every child, 2 years of age and older, must receive a Social Security number. It seems a little ridiculous that when they get their card, it says that they have to sign it for it to become effective. The other thing I want to just make mention of here in passing is the fact that the Congress is now recognizing and saying that there are de facto national databases emerging that were never really intended to be that way, But with the proliferation of computer statistics through marketing companies and large credit card corporations and banks, there is now a file beginning to emerge on every American, and we know that power like that has always tended to gather to its point of lowest common denominator in the hands of government. And certainly if government ever became totalitarian in any way, a national data bank does exist out there right now. We haven't even had a chance also to mention the cashless societies that are emerging in Australia and how Singapore has become an officially cashless society. The trend towards this new world order of the mark of the beast has taken on global proportions. However, by now you've seen enough information, you've seen the video footage, you've seen the interviews, you've seen the quotes, you've seen all of the documentation, you've got enough that you can be the judge. Do you think the prophecy of the mark of the beast could possibly come to pass with the technology that we have today? I think you'll agree that it's clearly much better than a guess that someone took 2,000 years ago. And this is only one of the fulfillments of Bible prophecy that we see coming to pass in these last days. The birth of the New World Order, the rise of the New Age movement, the emergence of a one-world religion, the hole in the ozone layer, the decline of the environmental situation on this planet. All of these are prophesied events that are pointing to us that Jesus is coming back soon. But the important thing now is to go beyond the facts, go beyond the information. You've got to get it from your head down to your heart. If you're a believer, we need to ask the Lord to stir us with these things and to make us realize the nearness of His coming. It's not so important when He's coming, it's who's coming. And that's the thing we want to point out in this ministry. The devil's greatest weapon in these last days is to try to lull the church to sleep. Remember the prophecy in Matthew chapter 25, all of the virgins are dozed off and sleeping when the Lord returns. We need to pray that the Lord will invigorate us with the hope of His glorious appearing. If you're not a Christian, if you're not ready, you've heard these things before, you need at this time to ask the Lord to come into your heart. And that's all you have to do. If you don't know what to do at this point and you're confused and you say, boy, this sounds so real, but I don't know what to do, you don't have to go see some priest or some Pharisee or some scribe. You just have to learn to turn to the Lord Himself. You can just open up in prayer and ask the Lord to come into your heart and to forgive your sins and to have fellowship and to make you ready for that moment when He will return. That's not to say that after that you shouldn't get in a good Bible-believing church, because I believe that we need to gather together as believers now more than ever to encourage one another and to strengthen one another and to be ready because the Lord is coming back at any moment. This is not a religious event. This is not dogma. This is not religion. This is pure faith in the Lord Jesus Christ. Remember, when you see all of these prophetic events come together, the Scriptures tell us in Luke chapter 21 and 28, when you see all this begin to come to pass, then look up and lift up your heads, for your redemption draweth nigh. Don't let anyone rob you of that hope. Do not let the devil lull you to sleep, because in a moment the Lord is coming back, and He wants to take you to be with Him forever. God bless you.